David Belman. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Dominic. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. I'm so happy to be on the line with you, and I get to see your actual studio. We're gonna have to talk
Yes.
about that in a second because I see some stuff hanging on the wall.
Yep. Yeah, we have it's been great. I have a podcast studio for my podcast, but it also has been the new Zoom hangout for the last year, which wasn't
Yeah, no
intended, but
kidding,
it's worked out great.
no kidding. Hey, David, just so that we get started the right way, and so people know who you are and why we're talking on the Profit to About podcast, can you tell us who the heck are you, and why would you be talking to a group of construction pros all around the world?
Sure. So my name is David Belman, and I own Belman Homes here in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and local home builder, land developer, and realtor. So we kind of do everything, but I'm also very involved in the industry as well. So I was president of my local builders association a few years ago. I was the first one ever to go right from that to the state builders association. So I worked on right with our legislators on bills and testifying and creating
Wow.
some laws for housing. So that was kind of cool. And I also became active at the National Association of Home Builders as a director there. And they have a new young professional committee. So I've been working with young professionals all
It's
over the
it's nice to
country.
still qualify for those awards, isn't it? The Young Professional Awards.
Yeah, it's I'm getting out of that category though. It's kind
Yeah.
of sad, but yeah, so I do that, and then I host a home building hero podcast. That's what it's called, and it I started it about 2.5 years ago, and we help homeowners learn things about builders. We talk
Mhm.
about industry trends. I also talk about news and current events, and it's actually kind of pivoted now where I have a lot of industry people listening to it as well. So, we have a pretty big audience, and that's been a great show. And then the other thing I do, if I don't have enough to do already, is I have a group that I work with called the Young Guns. And it's something we started about 2 years ago. And what we do is we promote the virtues of entrepreneurship. So we
Oh,
help
I love it.
people, yeah, learn about business, and we bring in really great guests from all over the country. We actually had Martin Lindstrom, who is like a 7-time New York Times bestselling author. He came and spoke at one of our events. So we bring people together, and we actually have a TV show we do called YG TV, and we host different topics, and we have a new show come out every week. And
You're a
yeah, it's
busy
been really
guy.
cool and exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a busy guy. Well, listen, today we're going to be talking about inside the mind of a home builder, but it sounds like you've got a lot of corners and pockets and boxes in your mind we could explore.
Yeah, yeah. My mind's a home builder and a few other guys as well, but yeah, definitely have the entrepreneurial mind, and that's okay. It's you get your business in a place where it's working good,
Yeah.
and then you can do other good and other things besides that.
Yeah. I I had difficulty calling myself an entrepreneur for a long time. And it's funny because it's easy to get printed on your business card. It's hard to say it out loud for me, very hard. And I find consistently with the people I deal with that the word entrepreneur, they're not comfortable with it because it can sound scammy. Well, maybe I should say for me, it sounded a little bit scammy. It sounded a little bit pretentious. But then,
Yeah, it sounds
I've
egotistical a little to me sometimes,
yeah,
but you
but
know, entrepreneurs create things, they make things, and that's a good thing. And you know, it's kind of a saying that you can be a president or you can be a CEO, but when you're an entrepreneur, you actually have created the thing, you've made it, and you built it. And so I think when you think about it in a deeper level, that's
yeah,
actually an important position to have.
make something out of nothing. My son, because they've been home for COVID for a little while now. Not the other day, a little while ago, he said, "Dad, what's a business?" And you'd think
That's a
I would
good
have that
question.
answer ready to go, and he stumped me. He's 12, totally stumped me.
That's
And so I
great.
had I had to come back to him a little bit later, and I said, "A business is just a collection of systems that solves problems for other people and makes a profit for the owner."
There
But
you go.
just
I love
getting
it.
that in my head, it took a lot of work. And a 12-year-old stumped me, a lifetime business coach and so-called entrepreneur. So
Yep.
hopefully,
It's yeah, sometimes you don't think about that, and if you can't explain something right away, it's like, oh, you probably good time to step back for a second and think about it. And that's good. He challenged you, and I love it.
in simple terms, yeah. Hey, listen, before we get to the inside, the recesses of your mind, there's a pretty cool looking guitar hanging on the wall behind you. Can you give me
Sure,
a
sure.
couple
So
seconds?
I
And yeah, what is that?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't play guitar, so that's um,
Ah,
so don't expect that. But I have a couple of them on my wall, and so that one's actually a signed guitar from Kid Rock. And part of
nice.
the reason why I have it and I have these signed guitars and stuff is that I work for an organization called Operation Finally Home. And what they do is they provide a brand new mortgage-free home to a wounded combat veteran.
Oh,
And
so good.
it's such an amazing cause. And so I found it about 5, 6 years ago. I was going through some pretty difficult times. I was actually buying out the business from my brother, and we were partners, and I kind of needed something positive. And
Mm,
so I found this organization, and they had a really cool event that they had me come to. It was a concert, and they told a story about a veteran who um, lost his legs in Afghanistan. He was in a vehicle, and an IED blew up and crushed his legs in the vehicle, and he had to have them amputated. And unfortunately, this is a guy that wanted to serve 20 plus years in the military. He had to have that obviously taken away.
yeah.
And it was a heartbreaking story, but it was even worse because he had 6 kids at home on top of all of
Oh,
this. So,
my.
like, imagine, put yourself in his shoes for like just a minute and think of like, okay, this is the career you know and love. It's ripped
Yeah.
away from you suddenly. You're now permanently injured, and you have a family to take care of.
Yeah.
How do you process that? So, what we what they did is they found him and they surprised him and gave him a free home, and they took away
Quite
that
the
whole
surprise.
worry of taking care of the family.
Yeah.
It helped. It was therapeutic for him. He went on to be on some radio shows and different things, and really neat guy. And at the event that I was at, all of a sudden they play this video about him, and then out on stage this guy walks in shorts. He's got his metal legs on now. He's got a big USA shirt on, and he's pumping his fist, and everyone was just so excited. And I was like, oh, I got to be a part of this. So I agreed to do one back in
So cool.
2014,
Yeah.
and we've done 6 of them since. So pretty awesome stuff.
Oh, wow. Talk about building. So there you go. As an entrepreneur, you're giving back to the community, not just the people you're employing, but now the what do you call it? The pebble on the pond, the ripple's going a bit further.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, part of that's just getting the business into a place where you could do something like that. And, business, as you defined to your son, is a way to make a profit, but it's not just about profit. It's an opportunity to give back. And if your business is profitable and you're making money, then you can be able to do other things and help other people. And that's really transformative. And I think that's really where, that was the change in my mindset of going just from, hey, I just want to be in a business and make money too. I want to make a difference in the world too. And so
Wow.
that's part of and that's my legacy and building my legacy. And so that's something that was kind of transformative for me. And I actually wrote a book too about that's called
Of
Leadership
course you
Growth
did.
Hacks.
Of course you did. Oh,
And so
sorry. What's
that's
it called in case people want to write it down?
sure, it's called Leadership Growth Hacks,
Uh-huh.
and you can get it on Amazon.
Nice.
And it just came out about 2 months ago, but yeah, it talks a little bit about building your legacy. And then we have a whole bunch of stuff in there from being intentional about your growth, creating the right state of mind, finding the right people, being efficient with your time, overcoming fear, building your personal brand, all that kind of stuff. So it's,
Oh, sounds very, so that's great. I just wrote a book as well. I know the kind of work it takes. And it's interesting that you started with mindset because I started my book with mindset as well. I find that's one of the biggest limiting factors
oh,
for so many
absolutely.
people, not only business owners,
Yeah,
and people out.
it's,
It's incredible how much it holds people back.
yeah, I mean, there's the knowledge piece, but then there's the mindset piece, and they really go together. And if you could be really strong at one, but if you don't have the other, you're never going to get there. So it's kind of like you have to sort of build your mindset, and then you kind of fill in like, hey, this is an area I'm weak on. I'm going to read some books and learn about this. So that's kind of how I did it. Was, hey, I'm not great at financials when I started, so I read some financial books. Hey, I could get better at marketing. Here's just some marketing books, and so on and so forth. And
Yeah.
so um, to get to who you want to be, you gotta have a continual, growth mindset and want to continue to get better.
Yeah, you have to aim at what you want. I want to talk to you about that today because I'm sure you're different now than you were at the first home you built versus the 10th home you built. How many homes, by the way, for actually, let's back up for a second. What kind of homes do you build so people could get a sense of the
Sure.
kind of home builder you are?
So we're typically the home that people buy and live in forever. So I always say like we're their forever home,
Right.
because most of the people do live in our homes 20, 30 years. So it's usually like their second or third home. And so it may not be their last home, but it's like the home that they raised their family in and that
Right.
they spend most of their time in their life. And so it's not a starter home. So typically it's like I said, their second or third home. And it's customized a bit. So we're a semi-custom home builder. We do develop our own subdivision. So a lot of times they're
Okay.
packages right within our subdivision. But we do custom build occasionally and do higher end homes as well that are, in the $1 million plus range. Most of the stuff right now I'm doing is kind of the 4 to 800,000. It seems to be kind of the main area we're
The
focusing on
sweet
right now.
spot. Yeah, it's been incredibly busy with this global pandemic, which is I don't think any of us would have expected, but it's good.
Yeah,
And
it last year was bizarre because the first half of the year was really, really dead, and
yeah,
we never experienced anything like this. And so when this hit, we were like, okay, we got to batten down the hatches, and so we laid off one or two people, and we prepped to make build the company in the scenario that we wouldn't sell another house the rest of the year because
okay,
things were shutting down and we weren't sure what was happening. So we kind of were like, hey, let's go into survival mode. We can go till February, March of next year without another sale and be fine. And then things were shut down for a while. It was quiet, and then about 2.5, 3 months into it, the lockdown order got lifted by our governor,
right.
and things started to happen. We sold a thing here, sold a thing there, and then all of a sudden fall hit, and it was like, holy cow, it was so busy. I mean, we were just running like crazy, and all of a sudden we had a better year than the year before. We were up by like 15%.
Isn't that amazing? And you lost 2 or 3 months,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
right?
at least. Yeah. We lost probably 4 months or more.
Can I
So
back
pretty
up for a
amazing.
second?
Yeah.
And this is the business coach in me coming up, where I start to sound like the old TV show Columbo. Remember Columbo when he's reaching for the door handle? He turns around and he says, "Hang on a second, just one more thing.
Yep.
Didn't you just buy this business from from a family member, and then the economy stopped, just shut down? And so, what was the fear or the concern going through your mind at that time?"
Sure. It goes back a little further than that. So it's a family business. So my father started this back home building in 1981. And then around 2000, my brother and I were in the business. And so we both owned a separate building company. And the idea was we're going to transition from my father's company to ours.
Mm,
And we worked together for like 15 years. And then it wasn't working. It was very difficult. It was probably one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to do in my life is buy out my brother.
yeah.
And I just have a different level of drive, and he just wasn't that interested in the business, and it was creating culture problems and all sorts of different things. So finally, I kind of had the I need to do something because if I don't, there's not going to be a business
Oh
to
my.
come to. And this was during the last recession, in the early 2010 area,
Okay.
when a lot of this was starting to come to light. And it's like, you got somebody that's taking a high salary that's not really producing a lot, and I could see the writing on the wall in a couple of years if I didn't do something. So um had to make that big decision, but I knew like if I could get through that, I could probably do anything that I wanted to do in my life. So that's again getting into the mind of the builder, like,
Family businesses are such a delicate dance, and
yep,
it's so different. I've had them myself, and it's no two situations are the same,
yep. Oh,
and
absolutely.
living
And
through
so
it is so
after I bought
unbelievable.
them out, it was like we started to treat it more like a company, and we treated it like a business. And it's like
Mm,
it's so much easier to make decisions when you're not like, oh, I got to worry about this person's ego, and I got to worry about hurting this guy's feelings, and what's the family going to think about this? It's like, no,
Sunday
this is
dinner.
a business. It's my business now. I'm going to run it the way that I want to run it.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because when I went through that process, it was like as soon as I got through that, it was very difficult. But then once I got through it, it was like this giant light came over the business, and these awards started to come in. We sold a bunch of houses. Everyone was really happy. Things just kind of started to happen. We did Operation Finally Home, and it was just like everyone's just thought like like, who is this guy? Like, this just all happened overnight. And
Yeah, it
that's
seems
not the
like an
case.
overnight success, right?
Yeah, it seemed that way on the outside, but it was like, no, this was years of struggling and hard work and intentionally working on myself as much as I worked on my business. And that's what kind of got me to that point. But then kind of to go back to your original question, I kind of took a roundabout
You're
answer
good.
here. But so my father actually was still involved with the business, but last year he passed away.
Oh,
And
I'm sorry,
so
David.
he passed away like right before Christmas last year. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, we have this global pandemic. And I was like, man, it would be so nice to have this guy with 30
Yeah.
plus years of experience there to bounce something off. But at the same time, I was like, oh, my dad would have just this would have just overstressed him to the point of no return. So I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, he's probably glad he wasn't around for this. But yeah, so that was challenging, and there was that security blanket that was no longer there. So it was like, we have to make the best decision possible for the business and move forward.
Yeah. Incredible story. I think we might have to have you back again if you're
Yeah, let's
comfortable
to talk
talking
about it.
about it, buying out my brother. And then we might have to have you back again talking about leadership growth hacks.
Sure.
So a
Yeah, I got
couple
a lot
times.
going on, so there's
Yeah,
there's
you
no
do. You
shortage of
do.
stuff to talk about.
But today, let's get inside the mind of a home builder. And I want to start by asking, do you use sub trades or do you have all of your own trades?
No, we do sub out all our trades, and the one thing that we do that I think sets Belman Homes apart from other builders is that we do use the same crews over and over again, and we're
Ah,
incredibly loyal. Some of the trades are multi-generational. So like the guy that painted my dad's first house, like his crews are still working on our homes. We have a guy that's framed for us for 25 plus years.
oh, wow.
Um, the one electrician that we used, he was with a bigger company. He split off on his own and we helped him start his business, and he's still wiring our homes today. So that's the kind of thing that we do. So it's consistent and we're using the same guys over and over again. So the quality's there, and the
Right.
same people that build my models are the same ones that build my customer homes. So there's a consistency, a quality, and these guys all know each other. So they talk. Like the plumber's like, hey, I'm wearing the dishwasher today, and he's, or the plumber's telling the electrician he can come over and wire the dishwasher, and so on and so forth. So it's really neat that they actually work together and make
Right.
sure that everything's right and done properly.
So there's a lot of sub trades that listen to this show, obviously. I mean, there's a whole range of different trades that listen to this show. But what do you look for in a sub trade? Or maybe I should say this, what are red flags when you see a sub trade that makes you think, this isn't going to work? And I know you've had a bunch of the same trades for a long time, but I want to hear so that our listeners understand how they can act and react and set their company up for success to align themselves with somebody like you.
Sure. Well, we're very intentional about who we hire, and that's one thing that's it's hard to crack getting in with us because we are so incredibly loyal. So, like what we want from our trades is we want, obviously good quality work. We want them to give us good service as well. So make sure that they're, available when we need them. There's a sort of loyalty that goes along with it as well. Like basically, we're going to give you a lot of work, but then we need you guys to show up and keep us as like you're our number one priority, and
Yeah,
therefore we need to be your number one priority. So when Johnny home builder calls and says, hey, I got this new subdivision all of a sudden now, and I need, I want you to come work for me. They're like, well, no, we're doing Bellman stuff, and
all right, we're going to stick
so
there.
yeah, we're their priority, and they work for us first, and then we're very open with our communication too. So like during the pandemic, when things slowed down, we called a lot of those contractors and we said, listen, it's going to be slow for a couple months here. So if you do want to go get something, go ahead. But and then as soon as we started getting some things like, hey, we got a whole bunch of stuff coming down the pipeline.
Right.
So get ready for the next wave. And so communication was really key in that situation.
So nobody has this magic population like your sub trade. I don't want to choose a specific trade, but just let's just say the guy that does your siding as an example.
Yep.
He doesn't hire all of his people from Disneyland. He gets them from the regular
Yeah.
market that
No
everybody
kidding.
else does, right? So there's you can have a relationship with me as the owner, but I have to hire guys or people on my siding crew. What are some red flags you see on a crew to say, oh, something's going wrong with Dom's team? What are those things
Yeah.
you're watching?
Um, I mean, most of our communication is with the owner, but our project managers are pretty involved on the job site. And so we've had situations in the past with different trades where you're seeing a slippage or you're seeing, hey, it's taking you a lot longer, or, this, we notice some quality control issues, and you just have to stay on top of it. You got to communicate with them. And so,
Mm,
um, but a lot of times that's what our trades will struggle with, is they struggle with hiring the
mm,
right people, and they struggle with the issues of um, maybe dealing with a troublesome employee or things like that. And so sometimes it's just being there for them and helping them. And we've had other situations where there's a really great guy working for the company, and maybe the company itself is just not the greatest. And so, like, that was the case with our electrician, where I was like, we kind of see the writing on the wall that this place isn't going to be around forever, but we trust you. We know you. We know what you can do.
right.
And we think you should be on your own. And we've done that where we've helped them take away the fear of that business ownership. And hey, if you make this jump in this journey into entrepreneurship, like we talked about earlier, we're going to help and support you. And we're going to point you in the right direction. And we're going to guarantee you that we're going to, as long as you
Yeah.
can continue to deliver the way you have been, you're going to get this work and you're going to be very successful. So we've done that where we've been able to help grow the right person into their business. And we just did it with a Finnish carpenter recently, and young guy, and he's great. He's doing awesome. He's 2 years on his own now. And I mean, he's got all his own equipment and his own trucks. Just bought a brand new truck and doing really well. And
I
so
love it.
it's cool to see that.
Yeah. What about you as the owner? How are you different now than you were a couple years ago when you were at,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we are always changing and evolving. I would say that I'm a lot more aware of the systems part of the business,
ah,
and making sure that the business works without you. And so that's why I'm able to do some of these other things, because I don't have to be at every part of the business. I've kind of had to jump back in a little bit more in the last year with the pandemic,
yeah.
than maybe I was hoping, or part of my plan. But no, you have to be involved, and you have to spend a good amount of time working on your business, just not just working in it.
So
So
what does that look like? Because I talk to people about this all the time. And so they already know what I'm going to say. They're going to say, you need to know your numbers or the patterns in your numbers. You need a dashboard. You need simple systems. But I want to hear from you. What do you think that means? Working
yeah,
on the business.
well, one of the first things that I had to do was I had to create the time for it, and create
Mm.
the discipline. And so I created a default calendar. And so it's a calendar where I block off time. You're smiling. I can tell you know what
I'm
that is.
smiling so hard. I love it. Okay,
Yep.
good.
Yeah.
We
So
call it a
I
block
set
schedule
aside
or
time
default
just to
diary.
work on
Yeah.
the company and work on projects. So what we've done is try to systemize as many things as we can in the business. So it's not only the sales process and having a consistent process for when customers come in, to okay, now that that's done, move through the plan and the design process, and then move through the production process. And so sometimes it's just as simple as creating something like a checklist.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I see my salespeople keep missing these three details. Hey, let's put that on a checklist. So when they're signing off the plan, make sure you go through X, Y, and Z, and then make sure you collect, these three things, and then they fill out the checklist. And so you get people in the habit of that, and all of a sudden the consistency level gets so much greater. The
Right.
mistakes go down, the profit goes up, and the customers are happier. And it's just this wonderful thing. And it's amazing how those things happen. And most business owners don't always think that way. They're just like, they started as somebody, right? They started as, I was a really good carpenter. Now I'm going to own a building business. So
Right.
they never get out of that mindset of, I'm really good at that one thing, I'm going to stay with that.
That's what that's what I always tell people this show's about, and I hope they take away. This is not about being a carpenter. This is about being a business person who happens to be a carpenter,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
Or a
Yeah.
contractor
And
with a
so
bunch of
that's where
guys.
you develop that entrepreneurial mindset, and work on your business. And if you're just the carpenter guy and you're always on the job swinging the hammer, you don't own a business. You just bought yourself a job,
Just have a
basically.
job. Yeah.
So you have to get out of that mindset and become the owner. And that's hard. And sometimes even for employees, they don't always understand that. They're like, oh, this person used to do all this stuff and now they just kind of come in and
Oh yeah, you're
sign
too
the
good
checks
for
and do
us
that
now. You
stuff.
don't swing the hammer, you don't turn the wrenches. And
Yeah,
yeah,
so sometimes there's you have to sort of set that up and that expectation. And sometimes people don't always get that, but it's like you're the owner. You chose and you took all this risk to do this for a reason. So sometimes getting people to understand that can be a challenge.
I agree. And first we have to understand it as business owners, or as you said, entrepreneurially, because my job changes when I become a business owner. My job is actually to feed the company. I have to go out
Correct.
and get new work. I've got to manage the work we've got so that you can have a job to come to every day, so that you have consistency, so you can bring food home to the table, so you can put your kids in sports, and you can buy a new travel trailer so you can take a vacation. My job is to make sure you have work, and it's
Correct.
no longer to swing the hammer, turn the wrench.
Exactly. Yeah. You're looking at things, you're making sure the company's profitable because, heaven forbid, like if my company disappeared tomorrow, there's all the employees at the company that are, now at risk. But then it's think of all the trades, and we've got 40 different trades that work on the home plus their teams. So all of a sudden you start thinking of the amount of people that you impact, and it's tremendous. And so there's a lot of responsibility there. And so that's,
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you are running a good, profitable organization and in doing, the best that you can and investing some of it back in the business.
You mentioned numbers. You said you're, and let me say this first so I don't put words in your mouth. I'm not a numbers guy. However, I am a patterns guy. I love to track
Sure.
the numbers, but I actually track the patterns in the numbers. What do you do for numbers in the business that helps you manage it?
Yeah, and like my background is not accounting or finance, so I
Yeah,
was never
gee.
strong in that area. Most business owners typically aren't. I remember taking accounting in college and getting C's in it and saying, if I have to do this every day, I'm never
Oh,
going to
it's
do
not
this,
even
right?
fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't fun to me. And so, but what I was interested in was, okay, how do the numbers relate to what you're doing and how you're
Mm,
performing? So, um, you know, that's way more valuable to do that. So it becomes kind of like a game, and you start tracking different things like, okay, how many leads? Then what's your conversion rate from those leads? Okay. And then, okay, when we do a bid, how many of those bids do we get converted? Those are the kind of numbers that I think you should care about. And then, of course, you track the job as well. So you get the job and you track. So what we do is we have two different ways we track the job. We track here's originally what we quoted the job out as, and then here's how the job actually performed at the end. And I hate to say this, but there's always like a percent to 2% that disappears during construction. So, but
yeah.
now that's information that we have, and we can say, hey, this area we lost some money on, or this job took longer. That's where that some of that money went away. And so,
Money and time. Yeah.
yeah, as we've been looking at that and tracking that, it's been interesting because now that we've been intentional about looking at that, the percentage of our profitability has increased because we're learning, as you go, and you're seeing, okay, hey,
Yeah.
we're we're spending, 4 months in the pre-construction process. Let's try and get that shaved back down to 3. And it's hard to do these days, especially with COVID. But every day that goes by, this is another thing we just tracked, and it's crazy. But the last six
Cost of
months,
money.
the cost of a house has went up $95 a day by us.
No way.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Wow. I thought
And
you
I
were going
mean,
to track the cost of money. I know borrowing is pretty cheap now, but
yeah,
there's a cost to holding that money for an extra day before you roll it back over into financing.
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
the
We don't
cost
do
of a
that,
house
but
went up by $95 a day.
yeah, $95 a day, and I mean, like 60 of it was lumber. So
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's
I mean,
crazy.
obviously we know that's an issue right now, but just all the other things, it's just been ridiculous. And we're dealing with supply shortages and all sorts of things because of COVID, and
Oh my.
it's just, yeah, the affordability is definitely a big concern going forward for our
Can I
industry.
just pause for a second, David? I just want to remind the listeners what David just talked about is what you hear on the show when I talk about the end of job report, where we look at actual versus estimated. And then at the end of that little report, you do what we call the profit leak or profit lab report,
Oh,
which is
nice.
what did we
I
learn
love
from
it.
this job, right? Site conditions or materials went up, or the siding subtrade kind of didn't follow through, and so we lost some money. But doing that report, that number, that simple exercise is so incredibly valuable to a company. So that's the first thing that David talked about. And then the other thing is the dashboard and tracking your key numbers, which you guys will remember is the exercise where I talk about a beach in Hawaii and the my best by my best friend exercise. So you guys have heard all those exercises here on the show, and David is actually doing it, and he and I have never met before.
No, we've never talked about this before.
We met,
It's
but only to
crazy.
do our
Yep.
20-minute pre-call, but we've never,
Yeah,
we
no,
just
we didn't
mostly
even
talk.
talk about that. So it's
Yeah,
neat to see that, some of the stuff that we're using that's successful is something that, best practices from a coach standpoint.
yeah.
And yeah, know your numbers. And the profit review thing is big. I sit down with my controller and we just go through things, and we bring the project manager in as well. And
Oh, good.
it's like,
Yeah.
hey, we saw that. Let's say we're picking on the poor siding guy for some reason today, but
Because I said I was a siding guy. Nothing
there you
against
go.
siding contractors right now, by the way.
Yeah, but we had like, okay, let's just use that as an example. And it's like, hey, we saw that there was like a $600 increase in where the job was bid versus what we got
Mm,
billed for. And it's like, oh yeah, well, he had they shipped the wrong shake board on one job. And it was like, instead of getting the panel pieces, they shipped the individual shakes. And he just got it to the job site and he just starts installing it right away. And it's 3/4 of the way done. And we're like, why are you doing this? This should have been the panel board. Well, that's what they shipped. So I put it up, and here's the bill for $600. And it's like, wait. If this ever happens again, first of all, we went to the lumber supplier and showed them they sent us the wrong stuff. But then we go to the signing guy. If you ever see this show up on the job site again, we don't use this. So you need to call and have it, call us, and we'll get the bright stuff shipped out and go work on something else.
right.
And, you just cost us, a whole bunch of money. And so, it's we learned that going through that process. We would have never caught that if we hadn't done that. But then taking this step and applying it to the business so that you fix that problem so it doesn't happen again.
That's right. Yeah, mistakes are going to happen. Challenges are going
Absolutely.
to come up. Our skill and ability as a business owner is finding problems and fixing them.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I call it find and fix your 8 profit leaks, because there's 8 places in a company where the money's leaking, just oozing out. And
I
we need
love
to be
that.
able to find and fix those 8 profit leaks. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, if you were to say something to your younger self, your brand new to being a builder self, what would you advise him now?
The first thing I would say is you never stop growing. So start and continue to invest in yourself right away. And the
Mm,
other thing is to be confident, because I think when I was younger, I wasn't really fully confident in myself. And so that took a while to build that up. But when I got done with college, I was like, oh, I'm never reading another book again. I'm so sick of reading books. I'm so
yeah,
sick of
yeah,
doing
yeah. I
reports.
got you.
And I did. For quite a few years, I just avoided that in my life. And then I when I wanted to grow my business, the only way to grow my business was to grow myself first. So then I started investing in reading, and I allocated 20 minutes every day to reading something, uh, educational or developmental or inspirational. And so that made a huge difference in my life. And I know I wouldn't be this where I'm at if I didn't do those things. And I wish I would have started that earlier.
Yeah, interesting. It is the small changes that have the biggest long-term effect, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. And then the other thing that I would say too is, and I didn't do this early on, was just networking. So part of being a business owner is just being active in the community and being engaged. I've met some amazing people in the last, 7 to 10 years, and just going out and going to events and meeting people and learning about
yeah,
them. Sometimes you meet people and maybe they're not somebody you do business with for a while, but eventually, uh, when the need comes up, you've got the call, you've got the connection, and it becomes very easy to do business with them. And it's kind of a, if not now, when there will be a when someday. And
yeah,
I think that's a big thing too, is just making sure that you're, part of your role as a business owner is to be active and to give back and to be engaged in the community in your industry.
yeah. I have found consistently that the top people in any industry are a member of their trade association.
Absolutely. And that's huge to be active. And for me, when I got active, that's when a lot of opportunities came. So
Isn't it funny? Yeah,
I challenged myself, because I'm putting myself outside my comfort zone, but at the same time, I'm meeting different smart business owners. And like, for example, when I mentioned that I was at the Capitol testifying for a bill, the funniest thing was this bill that I was working on testifying for, I didn't really think how it was going to impact me personally. I just knew that we needed to have this. And then a year later, I'm working on a subdivision and I'm sitting there at the town board meeting talking to the board members and explaining the bill to them. And I'm sitting there thinking, I would have never been able to do this. And they're sitting there like they're getting a first class education in this bill. And I'm like, the reason you can't pass on the subdivision is because this law right here, and this is what the law states. And they're like, holy cow, like,
Who's this guy?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I felt like a lawyer, but at the same time, that was the kind of knowledge that I got just by
Yeah.
volunteering and helping out with that process. And I was able then to use that process to get a brand new subdivision across that's never been done before. It was a totally new concept.
So was this at the state level that you were testifying, or at
Yeah,
the,
this was at the state level, and there was like it was pretty cool the year I was president because we got 7 bills passed, which was amazing for housing, and a lot of them are still being used and in effect today, and they've made a big difference. And so
that's so cool.
now we can't get anything passed because we have divided government, but it was neat to be a part of that process, and it was like the right timing to be in the right place at the right time. And yeah,
Well, I want to go
I
back to
learned
this
so
though.
much from
You've
it.
never presented at the state level before. So what was going on in your mind as you walked in that day? Like, I've got my nicest suit on, and
Yeah.
who did you have to be to finally sit down in front of the state legislators and have this discussion?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be comfortable in yourself. You have to be confident. And when I first took over that role, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm like, should I really be doing this? Like, am
Yeah,
I over my head? But after you get through your first meeting and you kind of run things, and you're like, okay, I got this. And then you just kind of build upon it. It's like, okay, I ran this meeting with all these builders, and I'm still here. Everything worked out good. And now, a couple of these people I had met before already was like, oh, I already talked to them. Like they came into our group and I talked to them for 3 minutes about an issue. And now here I am, I'm just sitting in front of them and now I'm laying out the case. So,
incredible.
it's the how do you eat an elephant analogy, and it's one bite at a time, right? So
Yeah,
if you let that stuff overwhelm you, you'll never get anywhere. But if you just, okay, I just have to go in, I've got my notes, I'm prepared, boom, I go through, I tell my story and relate it to them or relate it to the issue. And you only get like 2 minutes in front of the legislature to
oh, of
testify.
course. Yeah,
So
yeah.
you got to be on point, and you just be you and tell your story. And they're not going to argue with your story.
It's your
Um,
story.
and they want you there for a reason. They want to hear from you.
Unbelievable. David, it has been so good to have you on the show. We've covered so much real estate, if you know what I mean, like topic wise.
Oh
We've
yeah.
bounced
Yeah.
around a
All
lot of
over the
places.
place. Right.
Yeah. But I really wanted to have you here. And I'm so happy that you agreed to be on the show, because we want to get inside your mind. Like, what is it? You're a great home builder. You clearly care about what you're doing. You take on big projects and you don't even bat an eye, but you've also had to go through a lot of personal growth to get there. And so you're not the
Absolutely.
same guy today as you were when you started. And that's none of us are.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And the other big piece of advice I'll just throw out to you is just, understand your limits, and sometimes you got to say no. And that's the hardest thing for any of us to do, is sometimes just to say no. And customers come in, they want an extra discount, or sometimes you got to say no, or the employee wants more than what maybe they're entitled to. Sometimes you got to say no, or this job sounds really great, but it's not really in our wheelhouse. Maybe we got to say no to that.
Yeah. Like, just site conditions aren't what you guys are used to building on, and it'll throw off the whole project. But understanding, and I would have to say, going back to that, what I call the end of job report, just gives us so much education on our company and where we're good and strong and where we're weak. We're
Yeah,
just,
it's great advice, and I think anybody that's running a construction company should be looking at that. And even myself, I go, we could probably even do a better job of that. There's always opportunity to get better, and so if you set out to try and get a little better every day, it makes a big difference.
love it. David, thank you so much for being on the show. Hey, if somebody listening here wants to get in contact with you on the side or find out more about you, how would they do that?
Sure. So our website for our building company is belmanhomes.com. That's BELMAN homes.com. And then if they're interested in my podcast, The Home Building Hero, you can just look it up, Home Building Hero, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And if they want to get a hold of me personally, you can just email me. It's david@belmanhomes.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us here. I appreciate you taking the time to educate our audience. All we can do every day is keep moving forward. And I would say that listening to you today is like reading a book,
Oh,
right? Some
fantastic.
people
I
don't like to
appreciate
read, but if you
that.
can listen to podcasts to get this kind of info, why wouldn't you?
Absolutely. And yeah, anywhere you can learn books, podcasts, take advantage of that information because it's great stuff. And you can, if you have the excuse that you don't have time, you're in a car, you can turn on your phone, your podcast, and you can listen to something. So don't use the excuse you don't have time. That's just an excuse.
Do you know how much your dog wants you to listen to a podcast because you're going to walk longer?
There you go. Yeah.
Right? Just make the
Yeah.
dog happy. Go for a
Yep.
longer
Yep.
walk.
There you go. I
Yeah.
love it. Well,
All right,
thank you,
David.
Dominic. I appreciate the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Have a great day.